This is indeed a privilege for me to stand before you and share some of my thoughts on who is a public leader. I'm sure all of us have our own notions of who a public leader is and who a public leader can be. And it's true that in every sphere of our lives and in every little circle of our existence, there arises a leader. And in that sense, a public leader, I feel, in its largest sense, does not exclude anyone. It includes everyone. But there are certain specifics, requirements for a leader to be a leader. And in that public sphere, there are ethics. We talk about ethics. We can talk about commitments. We can talk about principles. And this afternoon, it is my pleasure to share with you some of these qualities that we look for in a leader. The fundamental characteristic of a leader is someone who knows where he or she is going, which means that person needs to arrive at a destination. And how do we get there is the question. Do you get there by any means, anyhow, or are there ethics involved? And how do you communicate your destination? That is the story. In that story, do we want to motivate people? And it's really right to motivate people. Sometimes we talk about motivating inputs, motivation workshops, but surely the purpose of where you are going and what you are doing should be motivation enough that you apportion a part of your existence, a part of your work, a part of your dedication to that very purpose without regrets later. It does take time to arrive at such a conclusion or such a journey, but that is where the challenges lie and where leadership qualities emerge. In the context of our state of Nagaland, our leaders, we believe, and want our leaders at every sphere, whether it be at inside the church where we are today, or inside within the village hierarchy, or even smaller within the family units. And then when we look at our governance and the administration, we look for commitment for people who will lead us, the general public, to a freer and more prosperous life. Public problems can be changed not only through government actions, but also by non-profit and for-profit organization. Still, we all agree that governments are the strongest and most powerful actors in addressing public problems. But how much do we trust our governments to address these issues also then comes into play when we talk about the role of our public leaders. Many of us have influence and power to make changes, yet we have failed our communities by denying basic rights, by reducing economic opportunities, and undermining effective governance. I don't think I need to stress very much more on these points or issues that I have just pointed out, because when we look around, we see that there is definitely a great potential for improving the quality of our lives here with what we already have by managing our natural resources. And these are all fall into the domain and into the activity of public leaders and their commitment. We can debate and suggest ways and means to address these issues of governance and challenges, but we must also dwell on the values that public leaders should hold, values within all of us when we try to advance the public interests. The consistency of adhering and holding into these values can help us to mitigate the challenges and bring changes needed to solve public problems. The values we talk about here are not in any particular policy issues or related to any particular public leader, but principles we should follow even when doing so. Results in conflicts with particular policies or leaders we have allegiance towards. So in the values that we look at, I would like to look at 5 specific values of who a public leader is and what qualities this public leader then should strive or can strive to have. The first being truth and knowledge. Believing in the importance of truth and knowledge has implications for both personal and public policy. Honesty is requisite when speaking and writing. And within this honesty is the quality of integrity, or the characteristic of integrity is what should hold the man or woman even when it is difficult to speak the truth. A public leader is one who seeks to understand the world better and to see how geopolitical developments, which change every day, can impact his or her responsibility. On the policy side, a public leader is one who supports inquiry and analyzes and respects the resulting evidence in making decisions. It's not because facts are right or can always be right, or they are straightforward, or that experts should take charge. Sometimes facts can be disputed and experts can be wrong because of some analytic error or thinking or bias, conscious or unconscious. But the solution is not to lay aside these facts and expertise, but to actually collect more facts and examine the evidence more carefully. In 1956, John F. Kennedy, at the commencement of the Harvard University, talked about the role of expertise in policy making, and he concluded, quote, "I do not say that our political and public life should be turned over to experts who ignore opinion, but I would urge them that our political parties and our universities recognize the need for greater cooperation and understanding between politicians and intellectuals," unquote. In our state, I wonder sometimes just how much of the inputs of intellectuals go into formation of our policies and address the conditions of our state and of our people. The second value being that guiding public leaders is a belief in the worth of each person, regardless of their gender, race, political views, religion, socioeconomic status, national origin, and very recently now, the gender bias. It is also a question of inclusivity. How much do our public leaders today include the people, include their populace, include their electorate, include their village, include the entire interest of the people of the state? The third value which I see is the importance of civil discourse and compromise among people with different views. Public leaders need to have that largeness of mind and which includes everyone, the courage to have and to interact with other people with different points of view, instead of dismissing and ignoring those with whom they tend to disagree. Public leaders can have the courage and space to listen to their detractors or critics to try and understand them, even while vigorously advocating their own views, and seek ways to work across differences that do not require them to abandon their principle, but allows the situation to move forward. Public leaders are also people, personalities in a position who can make governments and civil institutions act effectively in public interest. Achieving this needs several things. We need political processes that can reflect the will of the people. In a democratic country, that means free and fair voting, robust participation, mechanisms to limit the role of money in politics. Public leaders also require to pursue excellent public administrators, that is, to see the delivery of government services which benefits the work for its citizens. Thomas Edison once said, "Vision without execution is hallucination." Execution of government functions is weak and corrupted in too many cases. Actually addressing these nuts and bolts in governance is a lot less glamorous. But then addressing these issues is no less important than, say, developing a grand policy of strategies. And it does indeed, in the end, contribute a whole lot more in developing societies. The fifth value of public leaders is to guide those who want to save the public, and focusing those who are, and in doing so, focusing on the disadvantaged in economic or social terms, so they have a fair chance to succeed. And as a woman, I would like to impress upon our public leaders in Nagaland today to look at the state of women. We have a Department of Women in Nagaland, which is unique in many ways. But when we look at the budget of the Women Department, it is minuscule. And yet, when we look at the world today, we see statistics all reveal that women are 14 times more vulnerable than men in the case of natural disasters associated with climate change. And now we are in an age where the pressures of food, finance, and the crisis of oil and wars and rumors of wars are now engulfing us. What do we do in this kind of a situation? There is required compassion and concern from our public leaders for those who are being left behind and unfairly. It is both a moral imperative of those more fortunate. Most of us sitting here are more fortunate. And we need to look at and reach out for those who need a helping hand, for those who are in need of encouragement, and for those who need to be brought into the chain of supply, demand, and to keep them afloat. The former president of Colombia, when he received the Nobel Prize for enduring the long-standing civil war in his country, said that he was advised by one of his professors to quote, "Whenever you feel discouraged, tired, pessimistic, talk with the victims. They will give you the push and the strength to keep going." In the times of the pandemic, and when the world was faced with this crisis and many people were out of employment, loss of jobs, malnutrition, it brought to the forefront again the vulnerability of women. And right now, in the world today, there is a changing talk when we address the issue of women development or women empowerment. In fact, women empowerment is no longer a word that is central to the words that are used by public leaders, quote unquote. Now, the new generation want to hear their leaders say that they will give women a fair chance and aspiration, and also invest in human capital. Adhering to these 5 values is not the end, but only an indicator of a beginning of good policy and leadership. These principles sometimes can come into conflict with each other, and resolving them can be difficult. But if more people in governance out, not in prominence and in not so much in prominence, but yet having the reach to be in contact with their communities and are in positions to do so, if they were to offer principled leadership described in the values discussed, we might then begin to solve public problems described and restore confidence in governments, leaders, and our state of existence. I guess in the end, all I'm trying to share here is to evolve public leaders who choose to lead principled lives. Very recently, at the funeral sermon of Queen Elizabeth II, the Most Reverend Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said, and I end my address with this, quote, "People of loving services are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving services are rarer still." Thank you.